I had spent weeks preparing for this day. My daughter, Emily, was graduating, and I wanted everything to be perfect. Her cap and gown hung neatly in the hallway, the balloons shimmered in gold and white, and the smell of fresh flowers filled the living room. Today was supposed to be a day of pride, of joy, a day where all the sacrifices, sleepless nights, and struggles felt worth it. And yet, as I adjusted Emily's tassel one last time, I noticed him, my husband, standing by the doorway, arms crossed, looking off. I tried to ignore the pit in my stomach, telling myself it was just nerves, or maybe he was tired. After all, it was a long day, but when he spoke, the words stopped me cold. "I'm leaving," he said, flat and calm, almost disturbingly so. I froze, my hand stilling on Emily's shoulder. "Excuse me?" I asked, my voice higher than I intended, trembling with disbelief. I said, "I'm leaving today." During your daughter's graduation, the room seemed to shrink around me. Guests were starting to arrive, grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends, and all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. You can't just leave," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Emily, this is her day. She's graduating." "You can't." "I can," he interrupted sharply, a flicker of something dark in his eyes. "I'm done. I can't do this anymore." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I wanted to laugh, scream, maybe even faint. But the moment didn't call for panic, it called for control. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to step closer. "You're not leaving. Not today. Not like this. Not to ruin this for her." He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that made my stomach twist. "And who's going to stop me? You? Really?" I felt my hands clench at my sides, nails digging into my palms. "Yes, I will. I won't let you leave, not here, not like this." Then he did something I hadn't expected. He started screaming. Not yelling, screaming, the kind that makes everyone in the room flinch and glance toward you, shocked and uncomfortable. "I can't stay. I can't do this anymore." Guests turned toward us, their faces a mixture of confusion and horror. Emily's eyes filled with tears, and she ran to me, clutching my hand. "Mom, what's happening?" she asked, voice trembling. My heart broke in half at the sight. I looked at him, really looked. The man I had married, the man who had promised to love and protect our family, was unraveling in front of my eyes. And as his voice echoed in the room, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about leaving. This was about control, about power, about humiliating me in front of our daughter and everyone we loved. I swallowed the fear rising in my throat and squared my shoulders. "You're not leaving," I said again, louder this time. "Not until we talk. Not until you listen." He turned to me, eyes blazing, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. "You think you can stop me? You think you have any say?" I clenched my jaw. "I don't know what's driving you to this, but you're not ruining her day. Not today. Not ever." And then, the moment hung there, thick, tense, unbearable. I could see in his eyes that he wasn't bluffing, and I realized, with a mixture of fear and determination, that this day, the day I had imagined as perfect, was about to change everything. Little did I know, this was only the beginning of lies I hadn't uncovered, betrayals I hadn't imagined, and a fight I wasn't sure I was prepared for, but when I knew I had to win. For Emily, for me, for the life I refused to let him take away. The room was silent for a moment, except for the uneven rhythm of my own heartbeat. Guests exchanged worried glances, whispering behind their hands. Emily clung to me like I was the only anchor in a storm, her little fingers gripping mine so tightly I could feel her panic. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "Everyone, please. Just give us a moment," I said, glancing around the room. But my words barely registered. His glare cut through me, a mixture of anger and defiance, and I realized this was no ordinary tantrum. "You think you can stop me?" He spat again, his voice trembling with rage. "After everything I've had enough." I could feel the adrenaline surge, the protective instinct taking over. "Enough? Enough what? Enough of being married to you, or enough of being a father?" My voice shook, but I refused to step back. "Do you even hear yourself?" He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that made my blood run cold. "I hear perfectly. I'm leaving. And there's nothing you can do to stop me." I couldn't believe it. All the subtle signs I had ignored, the cold distance, the late-night phone calls, the sighs when I mentioned Emily suddenly made sense. This wasn't just a bad day. This was the culmination of months of betrayal, and I had been blind to it. "Not today," I said firmly, stepping closer. "You're not leaving today. You're not ruining her day. And I will not let you." His eyes flickered with something dark, something I didn't want to understand. Then, in a sudden burst, he slammed his hand against the table, sending glasses rattling. "Stop! Just stop!" Guests gasped. My mother-in-law clutched her pearls, muttering prayers under her breath. Emily buried her face in my shoulder, sobbing quietly. And through it all, I realized he wasn't going to back down. I had to think fast. I couldn't let him storm out, humiliate us, destroy Emily's big day. So I did the only thing I could. I grabbed his arm. "I'm not letting you leave," I said again, my voice low but steady, my eyes locked on his. For a moment, I saw hesitation flicker across his face, a crack in his anger. But then it was gone. "Let go," he yelled, jerking his arm free, his scream echoing across the room. It was chaos. Some guests stepped back, unsure what to do. My father tried to intervene, but I shook my head. This wasn't just about stopping a husband from walking out, it was about protecting my daughter, about standing up for myself. I swallowed my fear and focused on Emily. "Look at me, baby," I said gently. "Everything's okay. Mom's here. I've got you. We'll get through this." She peeked out from behind me, tears streaking her cheeks, and nodded slightly. And in that moment, I realized something vital. I could not let him control this day or the rest of our lives. As he panted, fists clenched and glaring like a man cornered, I made a silent vow. I wouldn't just stop him from leaving. I would uncover every secret, every lie, and ensure he paid for the pain he had caused us. But for now, I needed to survive this moment, to hold it together, to protect my daughter. And somehow, I had to do it in front of everyone who was watching, helplessly witnessing the collapse of what was supposed to be a perfect day. As I stood there, trying to keep Emily close and calm, my mind raced. How had it come to this? How had the man I married, the man I thought loved and cherished us, become someone so cold, so ruthless, so unrecognizable? I thought back to the past few months. The late nights he didn't tell me about. The secretive phone calls he would quickly, and when I entered the room, the sudden irritability, the way he would avoid conversations about money, about our daughter, about the future. At the time, I had excused it: stress at work, pressure at home, fatigue. But now, standing in the chaos of our daughter's graduation, it all clicked. He had been hiding something. Something serious. Mom. Why is he so mad? Emily's small voice trembled, and I felt my chest tighten. I bent down, brushing her hair from her face. He's upset, baby, but it's not your fault. We'll handle it. I promise. I straightened, taking a deep breath, and looked at him again. He was pacing, muttering under his breath, rage simmering in his eyes. But I noticed other things too: the subtle glances at his phone, the way his jaw clenched whenever anyone tried to intervene. There was more here than just a random explosion of anger. It wasn't just today. It was years of distance, of small betrayals, of him slowly retreating from the family we had built. And I couldn't ignore it anymore. Not for Emily. Not for myself. I remembered the way he had hidden bank statements, dismissed questions about money, and even downplayed his interactions with colleagues that always seemed off. There were gaps, moments that didn't add up. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the man screaming in my living room might have been living a life for years one I had been blind to. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. Could it be possible that he was planning something bigger than just walking out on us today? Something that could ruin not only my life but Emily's as well. I glanced around. Guests were frozen in awkward discomfort, some whispering nervously to each other. My mother tried to approach him cautiously, but he waved her off, eyes wild. And through it all, I felt a strange clarity forming inside me. I couldn't just react. I had to think. I had to plan. I looked down at Emily again. Her eyes, wide and frightened, reflected her trust in me. I could not fail her. Not now, not ever. I whispered to myself, a silent vow that no one could hear. I will find out what he's hiding. I will uncover every lie. And I will protect my daughter from the man who promised to love us but instead chose destruction. The realization hit me hard. This was no longer just a fight to stop him from leaving. This was a fight for our family, for our lives, for our future. And if I wanted to win, I had to be smart. I had to stay calm. And I had to pretend, at least for now, that everything was under control even as my world was crumbling around me. The moment stretched on, unbearable, as he continued to glare, pacing like a storm ready to break. And I knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. Whatever secrets he had kept, whatever betrayal had festered, would soon surface. And when it did, I had to be ready. The room was thick with tension. My husband's shouting had stopped only briefly, like a storm pausing before the next wave, and the guests stood frozen, unsure whether to intervene or retreat. I could see the worry etched on everyone's faces, their whispered questions barely audible. Please, let's all calm down, my mother said softly, stepping closer to him. This is Emily's day, our daughter. We need to think of her. He didn't even look at her. His eyes were fixed on me, blazing with something I still couldn't name. Stay out of this, he snapped. None of you understand. I've had enough. I felt my chest tighten. Enough? Enough what? I wondered. Enough of pretending. Enough of this marriage. Enough of a life he no longer wanted. Or enough of me finally seeing through his lies. Emily, trembling, tried to reach out to him. Dad, please. Her small voice was almost swallowed by the tension in the room. But he turned away, like she didn't even exist. That was the moment I realized something crucial. He wasn't just leaving. He was trying to assert power, to humiliate me in front of everyone I cared about. I couldn't allow that, not for myself and definitely not for Emily. I stepped in front of her, positioning myself between my daughter and the storm that was my husband. Listen to me, I said firmly, trying to keep my voice steady. This ends now. You are not leaving, not like this, not in front of her, not in front of anyone. He laughed, bitter and empty. And you think you can stop me? Yes, I replied, surprising even myself with the calm in my voice. I will stop you. And we're going to talk privately about every single thing you've been hiding. But not here, not now. Not in front of my daughter. My father-in-law stepped forward, voice shaking with anger and fear. Son, this is absurd. You can't just add, stop. I cut in, eyes locked on my husband. You are not speaking for him. I will handle this. For Emily, the tension thickened. I could see the realization flicker in his eyes. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't letting him win this. And I think, for the first time in months or maybe years, he was unsure how to react. Fine, he said, voice low but dangerous. Do what you want. I'm done. But mark my words. This isn't over. The guest slowly started to relax, sensing that he might leave the room rather than explode further. Emily's tears had stopped, replaced with cautious hope, and I pulled her into a tight hug. I whispered to her, everything's going to be okay, baby. Mom's got you. I'll protect you. No matter what. As I held her, I realized this was my turning point. I wasn't just reacting anymore, I was planning. I was going to uncover every secret, every betrayal, every lie he had kept from us. I would not let him control our lives. And if he thought leaving, or worse, destroying us would be easy, he was sorely mistaken. The storm hadn't passed, it was only simmering, but for the first time, I felt a flicker of control. And I knew, deep down, that this was the moment I had to start fighting back. Not with anger, not with fear, but with strategy, intelligence, and determination, because one thing was certain, my daughter deserved a mother who would never let anyone, not even her father, destroy her happiness. Once the guests had left, murmuring nervously among themselves, I closed the door behind us. The sudden quiet of the house was almost suffocating, the kind of silence that makes every heartbeat sound deafening. Emily had been escorted to her room, tears wiped away. But I knew she was still listening from behind the door, wide-eyed. Hoping her parents wouldn't break everything today, he turned to me, eyes dark, face tense. So, now we talk, huh? His voice dripped with sarcasm, but there was a dangerous edge beneath it. Yes, I said, keeping my voice steady, though my hands were trembling. Now we talk. And this time, I want the truth. No more hiding. No more excuses. He laughed bitterly, pacing the room. The truth? You want the truth? You wouldn't understand even if I told you. You've been blind for years. I squared my shoulders. Try me? For a moment, he stopped pacing, and I saw a flicker of hesitation. Then, he spat the words I'd feared. I've been lying. Not just about money, about where I've been, who I've been seeing. My stomach dropped. The secret I had sensed for months was finally surfacing. My heart pounded as he continued, each word like a punch. I've been miserable, and I can't keep pretending that everything's fine. And today, I can't anymore. I stared at him, stunned, trying to process what I was hearing. The man I trusted, the man I loved, had been living a double life. The betrayal cut deeper than any screaming, any public humiliation. Do you understand what you're doing? I asked, voice low but sharp. You're not just leaving. You're destroying our family. You're hurting Emily. You're hurting me. His eyes softened slightly, but only for a moment. I didn't want it to get this far, he whispered. I thought I could handle it. But I can't. And I don't want to lie anymore. I felt a surge of anger, a rage I didn't expect. You don't want to lie anymore. You've lied for months, years, maybe. And now you want to walk away from your responsibilities, from your daughter, from your family. You think I'll let that happen?" He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "No, you're not leaving today. And we're going to deal with this. Every lie, every betrayal, everything. You're not getting away with this, not with me, not with Emily, not ever." For the first time, I saw him hesitate, unsure how to respond. That hesitation, fleeting as it was, gave me strength. I realized then that I didn't have to be powerless. I didn't have to let him dictate the outcome. I could fight back, not with screaming, not with tears, but with strategy, with intelligence, with control. And as he sank into a chair, head in his hands, I began to plan. I would uncover everything he had hidden from me. I would protect Emily. And when the time came, I would make sure he could never hurt us again. Because from this moment on, I was no longer just a wife reacting to a man's anger. I was a mother, a protector, a strategist. And I would not fail. After the confrontation, the house felt heavier, almost suffocating. Even though he was quiet now, I knew the storm wasn't over. I couldn't trust him. Not anymore, not after the hints of betrayal, the lies, and the emotional destruction he had caused. And yet, I also realized that raw confrontation wasn't enough. I needed proof, evidence, something undeniable to ensure he couldn't escape accountability. That evening, while he sat silently in the living room pretending to watch TV, I started digging. First, his laptop. Passwords he thought I'd never guess, childish, predictable, and soon cracked. Then, emails, messages, receipts. Every hidden clue that painted the truth of the man sitting calmly in our living room. It didn't take long to uncover the first shock. Months of secret transactions, unexplained withdrawals, and late-night emails to people I didn't know. And then, more personal betrayals, texts, messages, meeting logs. He hadn't just been planning to leave. He had been plotting ways to isolate me, sabotage our life, and even interfere with Emily's opportunities. My hand shook as I read the proof. This wasn't just anger or dissatisfaction, this was calculated, deliberate. He had thought he could quietly destroy us while keeping his image intact. But now, the power had shifted. I realized I had to be careful. Confronting him with this evidence too soon could trigger another violent outburst, or worse, make him disappear entirely before I could secure our assets, our safety, our future. So I crafted a plan, gather everything, protect Emily, and strike strategically. As I worked, I also started reflecting on our past interactions. Every argument, every misunderstanding, every moment I had excused, suddenly they made sense. He had been wearing a mask, a perfect facade, hiding contempt and schemes behind the face of a loving husband, and yet, despite the anger, I felt a sense of empowerment creeping in. I was no longer the victim. I was becoming the orchestrator of my own life, of my own destiny. By the time Emily went to sleep that night, I had a folder full of incriminating documents, screenshots, and a timeline of his actions. I looked at the evidence and realized the scope of what I was facing, but also the opportunity it presented. This wasn't just about stopping him from leaving anymore. It was about reclaiming control, about exposing the truth, about ensuring that the man who thought he could walk away without consequences would pay. In the way only I could make him pay. As I closed my laptop, I whispered to myself, tomorrow, the real battle begins, and deep inside, I felt a strange thrill, not from anger, not from revenge itself, but from knowing I had finally awakened. and nothing would stop me from protecting my daughter and reclaiming the life that was rightfully ours. The next morning, I woke up early, long before he stirred from his bed. The house was quiet, Emily still asleep, and for the first time in months, I felt a sense of purpose rather than fear. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't just going to react to his chaos, I was going to control it. First, I started planting subtle hints. A misplaced document here, a carefully worded message there. I let him think he still had control, letting his arrogance guide his next moves. It was almost amusing, watching him pace, mutter, and check his phone constantly, completely unaware that I had already uncovered everything he thought was secret. I contacted a lawyer discreetly, setting up a meeting under the guise of routine family paperwork. I didn't mention the confrontation yet, I only hinted at financial inconsistencies. By the time he realized what was happening, I would already have professional advice and legal footing. Next, I focused on family. I carefully fed small, undeniable truths to my parents and Emily's grandparents, ensuring they could see his behavior clearly without provoking another blow-up. Everyone began noticing his patterns: the avoidance, the secretive phone calls, the anger over small inconveniences. It was subtle, but it planted seeds of doubt in their minds about his intentions. Then came the psychological angle. I started leaving traces, emails he had sent to secret contacts, copies of receipts, small notes revealing his hidden plans, all in places he would accidentally discover. Every time he realized something had been seen or noticed, he reacted with suspicion and paranoia. It was beautiful in a strange, cathartic way. His arrogance was working against him. By the end of the week, he was visibly on edge, pacing the house like a trapped animal. I kept my calm, smiled when I saw him, and ensured Emily's daily life remained untouched. She didn't see the war unfolding behind the scenes. She only saw a mother who was confident, protective, and unstoppable. It wasn't about humiliation yet, that would come later. Right now, it was about control, about shifting the power in our favor without revealing my hand too soon. Every move was deliberate, calculated, precise, and as I watched him, tense and uncertain, I realized the truth. He had underestimated me. He had thought I was fragile, emotional, easy to intimidate. But I had transformed that fear into focus. And when the time came, I would strike not recklessly, but strategically, ensuring he could never recover from the truth being exposed. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: strength. Not anger, not revenge, but real, unshakable strength. I wasn't just protecting my daughter anymore, I was reclaiming my life, piece by piece. And I knew one thing for certain: the man who had screamed at me, who had threatened our family, who thought he could control us, he had no idea what was coming next. The day of Emily's post-graduation celebration arrived, and I could feel the weight of anticipation pressing against my chest. Guests were arriving, the hall was decorated in shimmering gold and white, and the air buzzed with excitement. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. My husband, once confident and controlling, now moved with tension and unease, glancing around nervously as though sensing the traps I had laid. I walked in with Emily, radiant in her gown, and a mask of calm determination. Guests congratulated her, taking photos, sharing stories, laughing, but I felt a thrill of anticipation building in my chest. Today, everything would change. It started subtly. A few carefully placed whispers, gentle comments to family members. Did you see this email he sent? He's been acting strangely lately, hasn't he? The seeds were planted. Eyes widened, brows furrowed, doubt began creeping into the minds of everyone who had witnessed his outburst weeks ago. Then, as he tried to regain control, I moved my final piece into place. I presented the innocent family slideshow, ostensibly celebrating Emily. But hidden within were subtle slide screenshots of messages, financial discrepancies, and evidence of his secret plans viewable to those paying attention. No captions, no commentary, just undeniable proof. At first, he didn't notice. He smiled, mingling, attempting the charm he always relied on. But when he finally saw the whispers among our family, the subtle glances, the way people lingered over certain slides, his face shifted. Confusion, panic, recognition. Wait, what is this? He stammered, eyes darting across the room. I stepped closer, voice calm but firm. It's everything you thought you could hide, I said, letting the weight of my words settle in. Every lie, every secret, every betrayal. The room fell silent. Guests froze, some shocked, some horrified. My husband's lips trembled, a flush of anger and humiliation spreading across his face. He tried to speak, to deflect, but every glance, every message, every receipt I had uncovered was there, undeniable, visible to everyone. You can't do this, he shouted, voice rising in panic. But it was too late. The power had shifted. The arrogance that had once allowed him to dominate, to threaten, to intimidate, was crumbling before him. Emily, standing beside me, looked up and whispered, "Mom. You're amazing." My heart swelled. This was about more than revenge now. It was about showing my daughter that strength, courage, and intelligence could overcome even the most calculated betrayal. By the end of the night, it was clear my husband had lost control. Not only had I protected Emily, but I had exposed the truth in a way that left him powerless, humiliated, and unable to continue his schemes. Every lie had been revealed, every manipulation uncovered. And our family, saw me not as a victim, but as a mother, a protector, and a strategist who had reclaimed her life. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to breathe. The storm had passed, and I had emerged stronger, smarter, and unshakable. The night after the celebration, the house was quiet. The echoes of the confrontation, the whispers of guests, and the weight of everything that had happened hung in the air. But for the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace, a quiet, hard-earned clarity. I found Emily sitting at the edge of her bed, flipping through her graduation photos. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with pride and relief. "Mom. You were incredible," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know you could be that strong." I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You've always been my reason, baby. Everything I did, everything I faced. It was for you." She hugged me tightly, and I felt all the tension of the past weeks melt away. The fear, the uncertainty, the constant anxiety, it had all led to this moment. Not just the triumph over my husband's betrayal, but the reminder that I was capable, resilient, and unbreakable. Later, I sat alone in the living room, reflecting on the journey. I thought about how easily I had been manipulated, how blind I had been to subtle betrayals, and how I had let fear guide my decisions for far too long. But I also thought about the strength I had discovered, the intelligence, strategy, and courage that had been there all along, waiting for the right moment to emerge. I realized that emotional closure wasn't about punishment. It wasn't about revenge, though I had taken care to ensure justice. Emotional closure was about reclaiming my life, owning my power, and choosing what kind of mother, woman, and person I wanted to be. The sound of soft footsteps pulled me from my thoughts. Emily slipped into the room again, a small smile on her face. "Mom, we're going to be okay, right?" "Yes," I said firmly, hugging her close. "We're going to be more than okay. We're going to thrive. No one will ever control us or take away our happiness again." And in that moment, I felt it fully. The liberation of standing tall, of facing betrayal head-on, and emerging stronger than ever. My husband's actions had tried to define us, to break us, but I had rewritten the narrative. I had protected my daughter, reclaimed my life, and proven that even in the face of shock, fear, and heartbreak, strength could prevail. It was emotional closure, not through tears or anger but through empowerment, resilience, and a clear vision of the future. And that future, for Emily and me, was bright, unshakable, and entirely ours. The sun rose the morning after Emily's graduation celebration, casting warm golden light through the windows. For the first time in a long time, the house felt like a home, not a battlefield, not a stage for conflict, but a sanctuary for the life I was choosing to build. Emily bounded into the kitchen, her graduation gown replaced by a bright summer dress, her laughter filling the room. "Mom, can we go get ice cream today?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with joy. I smiled, ruffling her hair. "Absolutely. Let's celebrate properly, this time just the two of us." As I watched her skip ahead, I felt a deep sense of gratitude and liberation. The chaos, the betrayal, the shock, everything had led me here. And what I had discovered along the way was invaluable: strength, courage, and the unwavering ability to protect and uplift the ones I loved. I reflected on the man who had once screamed at me, who had threatened to walk out and destroy our family. He was gone now, not just physically, but emotionally, stripped of the power he had tried to wield. I had exposed his lies, safeguarded my daughter, and reclaimed control over our lives. And yet, what mattered most wasn't revenge or victory, it was freedom. Freedom to choose my own path, freedom to create joy, freedom to be fully present for my daughter without fear or uncertainty. I took a deep breath, savoring the crisp morning air, and realized that this was only the beginning. There would be challenges, of course, but I no longer felt powerless in the face of them. I had learned to trust my instincts, to act decisively, and to embrace my own strength. As Emily and I walked hand in hand toward the ice cream truck, I felt the weight of the past lift. The future was ours to shape, full of possibilities, laughter, and hope. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that no one, no husband, no betrayal, no outside force could ever take that away from us again. This was our life, our triumph, our new beginning, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled, not because the storm had passed, but because I knew I had weathered it and emerged stronger, wiser, and unshakably empowered. All right, everyone. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. If you enjoyed it, feel free to subscribe. Have a great day or night, and I'll see you next time.